least we're making progress, but that whammy also wasn't good enough to hope for ticks here. Damn. At least it's progress, but man, am I sick of playing this. I think that's actually tied first pace. Yep. See if we can throw away this one. Holy shit, it's fucking over. Dude, I am not exaggerating when I say that this one fucking song was probably harder than the entire rest of the set list combined to just get first on. I can understand hitting that first squeeze without extended hit window. I have no fucking idea how he got these ticks. It just doesn't make sense. And that's including the crazy methods I'm using to not drop ticks on the red-blue star power sustain that leads into the front end, and awkward as fuck, but whatever method that I use on the back end to be able to time the strum and fret asynchronously. So I'm essentially strumming on while holding the blue and green and then just shifting my finger over to red. Yeah, obviously counting the expansions that I've done for, songs like 17 and Only a Lad, Bathroom Wall, stuff like that, all that combined certainly wasn't easier or the same difficulty as this, but honestly, I feel like getting first on every song in the set list was about the same difficulty as this one fucking song. It basically all comes down to the first act, but good fucking lord, that is about the most fucked up act I've ever come across. And I think I put more effort and theory crafting and methods, troubleshooting, analyzing into that one act than any other act in any song I've ever played. There is so much going on, and on top of just how many moving pieces there are, it's just such an awkward clusterfuck on both the front and back end. This particular experience genuinely makes me pretty glad that I ran so far away was optimal for my TAS, because that means that there's no reason to push for like the full untied set list on this game. This probably means that I won't try to beat that shaken score either that I've got like 6 times, but that remains to be seen. This song, I mean, dude, I hope I never have an inkling to come back to this. There is still more here, but ugh, God, it just makes me sick to think about right now. I'm pretty sure half of why this was so unbelievably fucking hard and annoying is because my last SG broke pretty shortly before picking this song up, and there seems to be a couple key differences in this. It's not a new SG, but it's, it's new to me, I guess. The first thing I notice is that the strum switches on this SG are a lot more sensitive. You don't have to do a full click for the strum to register. You can actually hear it, as opposed to... And I'm pretty sure my last SG wasn't like that. Again, it seems like a very small thing, but it means that my strums are registering more quickly, and that makes a big difference with like early whammy especially. I'm just much more prone to hitting those sustains too early and missing on them. But the other aspect, and I think this worked in tandem with that to turn this into such a migraine, the whammy bar on here inversely seems less sensitive. And this song was the first time I really noticed that out of the few songs that I'd done with this new guitar, because I just had to go back and analyze those phrases for Act 1 because it just was not coming together, and I saw that my whammy was like 1 to 2 frames late on basically every sustain, and I was like, man, this is really weird. So I basically have been trying to rebuild my frame-perfect whammy muscle memory, and it has not been an enjoyable experience. It basically feels like no matter what I do, I cannot whammy too early, which is kind of a blessing at this particular point, because when I've been reviewing these recent runs back, it looks like I'm getting frame-perfect whammy. So I'm just kind of at that sweet spot, but that will push back one way or the other. I'll either start whamming too early or go back to whamming a frame or two late, just in that Goldilocks zone. But yeah, the less sensitive whammy bar paired with the more sensitive strum switches is what threw off my whammy so bad switching guitars, and it really makes me like think what else I've been struggling with in this game and if it had anything to do with that. So maybe I'll revisit a couple things. theme. Yes! Holy shit, I fucking did it! Oh my god, untied first. That is incredible. I honestly can't believe I didn't have any last act jokes on this pace. I mean, I know this last act isn't particularly hard, but I was shaking like I was on top of a fucking jackhammer. Though I did at least know, in the tied first run, I hit the back end for the last act. Star Power ended frame perfect, and it was because I actually got really good whammy on the first two phrases that run, but my third phrase whammy was awful. Like, I just missed it, and it was just enough to get there. I also had a worse front end that run than I know I did this run. So it didn't seem like frame perfect. Actually watch it back. Yeah, I had a couple spare frames, thankfully. But again, that was, I think, mostly because my front end was as good as it was this run. My whammy for the first two phrases was pretty shaky this run. I think in the tied first run, I was using a single whammy execution on those first two phrases. But just for reference, that was almost a month ago, like 3 weeks ago, that I tied first on this. And I was playing this song all the time at that point, and I had been finishing out a lot of the runs just for practice. This is the first run I've finished out or past the solo since coming back to this today. So I was real nervous about how that last act was going to go. Something else cool, this session was the first time that I got ticks off of the second act. I actually managed to get 2 ticks in one run from my TAS. I'm sure I mentioned this in the tied first, but whatever. Like I said, it's been 3 weeks. I can't exactly remember everything that I went through exactly. But yeah, my TAS, there were 4 frames of ticks possible on that. But considering there's 2 whammies, even though they should be pretty straightforward to optimize, it's more so the front end for the act that makes getting anything off of that so hard. And then the solo upper bound, which is possible, but the closest I got was a frame away on that. So I know I can hit that, and to be honest, I knew that I could hit it before I even got the tied first run, but it's just this song, like I said, I'm sure in the tied first run, is just the biggest fuck you tease at every turn. The song's path is just such that most of the acts lead you to this crossroad where you either have to play perfectly and get the extra points or just the run dies. And I know that sounds pretty general for a lot of score grinds, but this song just is completely in its own league in that department because that first act, for example, you're just walking the edge of a knife trying to hold ticks on that green before the back end chord. And yeah, it's essentially that. You're just trying to fight for every little bit of optimization. And that isn't as much the case with Act 2, but the push and pull with Act 2 is if you need ticks, you have to optimize it basically perfectly. And doing that increases your chance of missing by like 100 times compared to just trying to get the squeeze in, since you have to get like 5 or 6 frames into the sustain to start accumulating ticks. And particularly on the front end is where that just becomes so fucking risky, trying to abuse extended hit window for that. But the more analogous situation to Act 1 is Act 3, where the difference between the nearly ideal path and upper bound path act is so drastic that, obviously in this case, when I'm trying to hold on to ticks, particularly on that second phrase, I'm not looking for any early whammy. You just don't need it. But fishing for that upper bound act where your whammy needs to be perfect, if you're trying to hold on to any amount of ticks, that second phrase is just the biggest fucking headache. So when I was still trying to just tie first or do whatever I could to get this record, and I had switched from trying to optimize the first act just because it seemed impossible to trying to use the solo act to get the extra squeeze and hold on to slightly more ticks because the ticks you're dropping aren't under star power. Trying to hold ticks on that blue sustain before the second phrase solo whammy is just so irritating. I don't even think the note windows overlap. It's just the fretting for it is just such a pain in the ass. But yeah, if I was just looking for a double squeeze run, getting the nearly ideal first act and upper bound third, then I wouldn't be fishing for any ticks on that. Could drop it as early as I wanted. But yeah, just getting that first act nearly ideal, just in general, is still really hard. And considering I haven't even hit the solo upper bound and it's so far into the song, like I just had no delusion of trying to look for a 311.3 and hopefully never will. And so yeah, what I was getting at through all of that discussion of the solo act and dropping ticks for the whammy is that that's just another crossroad that this song will lead you to, where you have to pick, do you want to fish for the squeeze or do you want to hold on to ticks, and you just can't really do both. Though since I already tied first, that decision was very straightforward. If I didn't have more ticks than I did on the tied first run after the second act back end, then go all out for the solo upper bound. Though that being said, even though it is unlikely, there could be a tick possible on the last act. I never TAS'd the last act out just because I didn't see the point, but that was another potential option for getting ahead on a tied record pace. But again, it's just that crossroad where it conflicts with going for the solo act, and it's like, I don't even know. To me, right now, the solo act is the more possible option, and obviously more lucrative. But yeah, this song is just a fucking nightmare concoction of optimization in different ways, and like huge risk reward swings that aren't in your favor. And again, I do have to stress that this was only so insane to get because the previous record was so incredible. I just cannot understand how the first time that first act Nearly Ideal was hit achieved those ticks. I'm sure I'll show it, but my first time hitting the first act Nearly Ideal, that run ended 3:11:158, 16 down from the previous record. And at that point, like, I was just thinking, what the fuck? Like, how the hell am I supposed to compete with this? But thankfully, everything finally came together. I knew after getting that untied record on Shaken yesterday that I was gonna want to go for this at some point. So as far as I know, at least for no lag glitch, obviously, this is all of the possible records to untie. 29 out of 30. But it certainly feels good to push this as far as I possibly can in that department. Holy shit, man. Fucking done.